But ultimately, we have our universal self, the Atman, um, that is completely connected with Source, with limitless love. And this is the core of what each one of us it is. This is our undifferentiated self. This is the awareness that precedes, if you will, and actually pervades all other self identities, all other understandings of what the self is, of who I am. And it is non-differentiated. It's formless. It's pure awareness. It's pure beingness. It is Satchitananda, existence, being, and bliss. And there's no sense of any separation from any other soul, any other being. There's just being itself. Not even I am a being, but I am being, I am beingness. And actually, even at this level, there's like no I am, because an I am also implies I am something, or it's just the amness, if you will, of pure being. And then it gets more and more differentiated into these different layers, because the idea is that the love force itself, Shakti herself, puts up these veils so that the universal self becomes veiled and is not seen or perceived by the individual self. And so the first veil is a veil around this pure, formless, undifferentiated, limitless love that we all are and that everything is. And that first expression is what I call the soul self. And it is called the Ananda Maya Kosha. Ananda meaning bliss, love. It is the love force. It's the love force that brings this just the beginning of a sense of differentiation, of being other than, if you will, this universal characterlessness the um, of the limitless love that is the ultimate Atman. And so here, this is like it's called our bliss body sometime. And it's here at our soul self that often our Kali Reiki begins, or at least it begins to radiate out into these denser layers. This is still a very fluid, undifferentiated layer. Like I said, there's just the beginning of the I am. Here it's like amness. Here it's I amness, if you will, a beginning of an awareness of self, but not in any kind of limited fashion. And if anybody wants to just chime in and offer some um, additional explanation, please feel free to do so. And so then the next veil here is veiling the bliss body. And here we come into the Vijnana Maya Kosha, the spirit, what I call sometimes the spiritual self. I will also call it the psychic self or the wisdom self. Vijnana means wisdom. And so it is, that's in yoga, it's understood as the Vijnana Maya Kosha. I want to explain something else. These outer layers of the being that get more and more dense, more and more condensed. It's like condensed energy, if you will, a little bit like condensed milk, but not quite. Um, and they all have Maya in their name because now Maya the divine Prakriti is by virtue of creating these external, denser and denser, less and less subtle, grosser aspects of self, is veiling this. Okay. So even what we think of as the soul is a kind of, and even though we know our soul is linked with the limitless love, the ultimate source, the Brahman, God, and is made of that, right? Because if we are created of that, how can we be anything but that? Just like a table is only wood, but given a form, it can be given the form of desk or chair, but it always is wood. And eventually, when the table, the chair, the desk decay, or people are tired of them, they just go back to wood as they decompose or decay or are chopped up even. And so to understand that kind of thing, everything is made of this, but there begins to be this sense of differentiation. And that sense of differentiation is Maya. It's an illusion because it's an appearance of differentiation in something that there is no difference ever. So this layer, the spiritual self, the Vijnana Maya Kosha, the wisdom, this is where, and our whole workshop the last couple of weeks was on intuition. And this is where we begin to have our inner knowing, our psychic experiences, our mystical experiences. We talked about the vibhutis in yoga, the mystical powers, and any of our intuitions, any of the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, etc., all they arise again from here, but the awareness of these is in the spiritual self. These experiences that I'm talking about are experiences that do not depend on the material world. And they also don't depend on our mind to interpret them. They're actually experiences beyond words. So we talked about the vibhuti, the mystical power of being able to communicate or understand the language of all beings, including animals. And how that happens only when we bypass the mind's concept, the mental concepts of the example that we often use is a cow. If I say a cow to you, chances are you picture some kind of you have an image of a black and white animal or being. And I say the word cow, you understand the word cow. If I spelled it out, if I wrote it out, you might get that same image. However, if you walk up the hill behind my house and you start talking to some of those cows there and sit with some of those cows there, it's a completely different experience. That's the experience without words. That's the essential cowness of the cow. And our mental images of it, they're mental images. They're happening inside the head. And our understanding of the word cow, how it's spelled, etc., that too is happening inside the mind. The mind, I should say, you could say this all happens in the head. And then I like to give the example, but yeah, the cows up on my hill, they're all black. And sometimes I get mad at them because I think cows should be black and white. And it's like, yeah, that's the mental image. When you say cow to me, I picture a black and white Jersey cow. That's to me kind of the standard archetypal cow. But then I see these cows in real life and they're all black. They're still cows, and I still know that they're cows. And my direct experience of them is living being to living being, which is very different than my image of them or, the mental concept of the word cow. So I went into the mental level, but in this wisdom level, it's like we have the experience, but we have the experience before words, before our mind's interpretation of the experience. But the Vijnana Maya Kosha just begins to kind of grok the essence of the experience. So I might be up on those hills around the cows, and I just begin to feel into this cowness, if you will. I may still not even have a word for it. And that's how intuitions show up as images, visions, felt experiences. And it's not until I get active in the mental self that I have a concept for it, or I can give the particular cow a particular name like Bessie or Hank or whatever. And that's when we get more into this layer, which is still subtle. We can't see our mind, we can't see our brain functioning. We only experience its effects. And it's what the mind does is it organizes, it synthesizes, it categorizes. And that's the beauty of the mental self, the manomaya kosha. So we might have this kind of just eerie, fluid experience in the intuitive realm. You might even have like an experience of healing or wholeness or whatever, but there's no words to it, there's no conception of it. Only the mind says, oh, that's Reiki. Or only the mind says, oh, yeah, in feeling fluid like that, it means you're relaxing. Right. The mind's the interpreter, the mental and cognitive interpreter, as well as it's the repository of memory. And so many of the conclusions mind makes in the present moment is based on memory of previous experiences, right? So my prototypic cow that's black and white, even though all the cows I see are black, all black. That's my memory. My memory saying those are the most cows I've seen. And whenever I've seen pictures, drawings, renderings of cows, usually they're black and white. So in my mind, a cow is black and white, or at least in my initial thinking of it, right? It's not like I've never seen a brown cow or whatever. This is just, to understand kind of like, so this is what the mental self does. And it also is part of our discerning intellect that helps us sort one thing from another. And when the mental self is really connected into our spiritual self, that's when we can do what in yoga they talk about as discrimination. Discernment's a better Western word in some ways, but discrimination in yoga means being able to discern the true from the untrue, the real from the unreal. And the ultimate discernment is understanding this is real and all the rest of it is Maya, illusion, and is created and registered in the mind. Okay. And the memory. And then beyond that is the pranamaya kosha. And we know our prana is our vital life force energy. In Kali Ki Reiki, of course, we refer to this as the love force. It's the energy that that allows us to exist in this body, to move around the world. That vital energy, right, is that which really enlivens us. And that vital energy is still energy. All of these things are just energy, getting more and more condensed or grossified, if you will. And the pranamaya kosha it's regulated by the breath. Our prana, our life force, is regulated by our breath. Our breath can be regulated by pranayama exercises, breathing exercises, but also by how we move in the world and our asanas. And we want it regulated because, as I talk about that, this is also the emotional self, because that's what Westerners tend to be more aware of, is our physical, emotional, and mental self. To a less extent, our spiritual self. But what is this emotional self? I call it the consciousness of the awareness, if you will, of this vital love force. Okay. And it doesn't really necessarily mean that we have this awareness of the love force running through us. Rather, it comes out in our emotional indicators, so that if we pay attention when we're feeling depressed or frustrated, often those emotions are signals that our prana, our life force, is out of balance. And it's often out of balance in our chakras, because our chakras are the energy centers, of course, within our being. So our emotions, on one level, right, they guide our behavior. And I really love hot dogs, so now I'm going to go eat a hot dog or something like that. Or I find this and this repulsive, so I'm not going to do that. That's one level of emotions. That person really annoys me, so I'm going to stay away from them. That's one level of emotion. But another way of understanding our emotions is that they are indicators of our pranic flow and the harmony within our system. So a negative emotion will indicate some kind of dysregulation in our energetic system, a dysregulation between these koshas, between our chakras, etc., etc. And so this dysregulation is shown to us through our negative emotions. So we might think, oh, gee, I'm feeling lonely, so I guess I should call somebody to do something. That's one way of doing it. But oh, I'm feeling lonely. What's out of harmony here? What's out of balance? And it may simply be I just haven't been around people, or I haven't been around people that I can connect with much recently. And so I need that. Taylor, you said in your text, you were kind of missing Kulis. You decided to come back. Probably some emotional signal told you that, like, oh, you're feeling something, and it's like, oh, I miss Kula. So you come back so you can connect in. Because as we know, of course, our Kula is a way of connecting with people that most of us don't have in our ordinary everyday life. And so we can very much start to miss it. And then when we're feeling good, positive emotions, similarly, that's a signal, an indicator that things are pretty well in balance. So just like pain, physical pain can be an indicator that things are not in balance, and physical well-being that they are in balance. So it's very important, because our emotional system gives us a sense of how our vital prana is working. And it tells us when something needs to get back in balance or back in harmony, both our positive emotions and our negative emotions. Now, sometimes we can have a positive emotion that's like kind of almost manicky. It's like we're so excited, we can't stop. We just got to keep going. We're driven, we're driven, we're driven. And that's a little different. Even that kind of like manicky driven, oh, I'm so happy, I just got to keep this up kind of thing. Um, that is also an indicator that things are out of balance. Just as an exaggerated negative emotion would be when we're feeling very depressed, but there's no cause to it, but we're feeling lousy, or we're feeling hateful, or just kind of one of those ugly feelings, but we can't really figure out why. And often that's an indicator that something in our system is out of balance. And it can be that what's out of balance is there's too much coming in from out there that's negative. I mean, that certainly can happen, but it all affects our own system. And then finally, of course, there's our physical self, our Annamaya kosha, and Anna means food, which is, it's such an interesting name, but it actually refers to that. First of all, our physical body requires physical food to sustain itself, and our body can be food for other creatures and forces in the universe. Fortunately, that doesn't happen to people too often, but if we were out there in the wild and we passed away, our body's a food body for something. Um, Even if you die and you decide to become compost to feed a tree, that happens. But this is our physical self. And here's where one of the biggest errors of human consciousness is we get very identified with these outer layers. And if you think of these like nesting dolls, with the Annamaya kosha, the physical body being the one you first see, right? And it's big. And then you open up and there's the next layer. That's the pranamaya, then the manamaya, the vijnanamaya. Eventually, you get to the center and you open up the smallest doll, and then there's nothing there, right? That's the formless universal self. And that's what we lose track of as we get identified with these. Now, what do I mean by identified? Because I know I talk about this a lot, getting over identified, et cetera, et cetera. And what I mean is we mistake the vessel for that which the vessel is carrying. Our vessel is carrying this soul self, or it's surrounding, it's supporting, it's protecting. It likes to think it's protecting that soul self that is actually unharmable and needs no ultimate protection. So we get identified with the vessel, with the outer layers, and we lose any sense of this. But also, that's how these veils work. Okay, it's like this is Maya's little trick of illusion, because we tend mostly to have an outward focus. So if you're the universal self and you're looking out, you see all the layers and you know you're at the center of it all, right? But if you're here, you can only see out here, and you tend not to look back and see that. Similarly, I'm going to skip on down to the mind. These three are definitely our ego self. And there's just this outward looking. The mind, the vital, and the emotional self, they're all kind of rooted in the outward, our senses, the things that our senses tell us. And in so doing, they're not aware of the foundations behind them, if you will. Now, there is actually an aspect of the emotional system that is more inner directed. There's an aspect of the mental system that's more inner directed as well. And certainly the wisdom self, so it can look both sometimes at the soul self and at the mental self. Sometimes the mental self can look at the spiritual self and outward, the emotional self too. So sometimes we have an emotion of bliss, of recognition of something greater. And it's a blissful, joyous emotion. It's not a joy that's caused by something external, an external event, but it's an internal experience. Similarly, with the mental self, there is a kind of looking inward, and that's the part of the mental self that can translate to us what's happening here in the realm that is precognitive, if you will. And so we're all these layers. And our work is not just to look out, but to bring it all in. And when we do Reiki and we activate the inner layers, they radiate that truth, that wisdom, that love out into the outer layers. And that's what allows healing on the, on the emotional and the physical, mental levels of our being, simply through that simple touch of, okay, let's do this. Instead of just talking, let's go inward. And it's like we really have to turn our focus around from outward to inward. And you can go then through all those layers from the most outer layer, the physical, to the vital, to the mental, to the wisdom, the spiritual, and to the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss body, the soul self. Really, that's where it all happens. And that's not even the innermost layer. The innermost layer is the causal body, it's called sometimes. The limitless love, the pure beingness. Excuse me, the pure beingness. But that we can't even enter and retain any sense of self unless you think of it as capital S, capital E, capital L, capital F self. The self, the all-knowing I, not the me, but the I. And so, as best you can, travel inward. And once you've gone as far in as you feel like you can, go ahead and activate Kali Ki Reiki, maybe with your master symbol. And feel its love force from that layer, starting at that inner layer of bliss, of joy, of truth, of soul. And let that radiate outward without your attention going outward, if that makes sense, without your mental attention going outward. Just keep your focus on that bliss layer, your soul self, and just feel how it radiates outward without, so to speak, turning around and looking out. And every time you catch yourself starting to look out, starting to think about your thoughts or think about your feelings or think about what's going on in your body, bring your focus back to the interior soul. Now, truly, the soul's not interior. We talk about it as that which the vessel holds, but no vessel can really contain the soul. It's just there's a portion of our self that has this experience of being embodied. It's quite possible that our soul is existing in other dimensions simultaneously to this one, is actually inhabiting other bodies. But that's something that one thinks about, so try to let go of the thinking and just feel in to your central core self that has no name, has no gender, has no particular taste in clothes or people. It just simply is. And if you start to lose concentration, picture again our beautiful master symbol and move inward, if you will, toward your soul self once again. Now I'm going to ask you, now you get to use your mind a little bit, to think about your day and think about a time, an episode, an incident today in which this feeling of being connected to your inner being may have arisen for you, where everything felt like it was in alignment and you could feel the bliss, the joy of your inner being. Now, maybe you didn't have that experience today. Maybe you can think of the last time you remember having that experience. And then think of a time in which you felt very in tune with your wisdom body, your intuitive self, your inner knowing. Maybe something happened today where you just had a knowing. I should do this, I should do that. This person is good. I can trust this. Maybe I need to avoid something, but just a real knowing that again left you in a place of feeling very in sync, harmonious, your whole system in harmony. And then think of a time today, ideally or recently, when everything felt out of sync. There wasn't harmony in your body, your emotions, your mind, your spirit. And think about that incident and think about which one of these koshas was dominant. Was it your mental self, your emotional self, physical, maybe even your wisdom self? One of those probably showed up more. Even as you think about this, you might feel that harmony dwindling that you felt a moment ago. And see if you can return to that harmony and let it shine out toward those outer layers. As you do that, perhaps the experience doesn't feel quite so unpleasant. So just notice how you're feeling now. Does it feel all pretty well in sync? Or is there something that still feels out of harmony? A lack of equilibrium? And whatever that is, whether it's something mental, emotional, physical, or even deeper, offer your healing to that level, that kosha of your being. I like to think of Reiki as kind of working with our koshas, like when we do an Om together, a group of us. And first we start out, and one person starts at one note, another person starts at another note. We're not starting at the same note. But by the time we're done, we're in sync, we're in harmony. And similarly, when we begin to activate the Reiki, things do come into harmony, into place, into sync. So we'll take just a couple more seconds and then we'll open it up for sharing.